I'm back. The first major puzzle game roadblock I had was with The Witness. I really wanted to enjoy that game. I bought it on release, I followed it through its development, I played the heck out of it, and it started off simple enough, but then it kind of became this?
This should be right.
Beep.
Shut the up. It's not
Yes.
here. No, it's not here.
Beep.
No.
Whatever that is. As it turns out, The Witness just wasn't for me. Another puzzle game that immediately comes to mind is, of course, Outer Wilds. This game is incredibly unique, but I already have a 20-minute video on it already, so if you're interested, go ahead and watch that. But I'm not going to talk about it too much here. Like I said, it's incredibly unique, but it does still have features from puzzle games that you're familiar with, like puzzles. Outer Wilds is so much more than just a puzzle game, so I super recommend you check out the game, and if you're interested, check out that video I mentioned as well. Portal 2 is an example of an incredibly well-crafted, and I'd argue, accessible puzzle game. This might be a topic for another video in the future, so I'm not going to touch on it much, but there's just something about Portal 2's design and gameplay that keeps it so fresh and alive in the ethos of people who just love puzzle games. There is one puzzle game, however, one that I am absolutely surprised that I completed entirely, kind of, Animal Well. This game surprised me a lot, and it quickly became one of my favorite games of all time. I had not heard of Animal Well during its development. I initially found out about it through Pirate Software's tweet about how he thought the game looked interesting and that he'd check it out. And so I did the same, and it completely hooked me. With its small file sizes, its beautiful yet eerie world, its wonderful ambiance and scarce music, its odd assortment of creatures and its lack of combat, and an atmosphere sort of akin to a game like Rain World, this game has a whole lot to offer in a pretty small package. So, without further ado, let's talk about Animal Well. So I have a pretty decently packed Steam library. As of recording this, I have 526 video games in my Steam library, and I can tell you off the top of my head, I've probably beaten like 40 of them. I mean, we're talking classic games like Hollow Knight and Hades, we're talking Dave the Diver, or even games like Sekiro and Dark Souls 3 that I've never actually completed. That all being said, I am shocked that I beat Animal Well and that I beat it in like 22 hours. I want to give a quick disclaimer, I did beat most of the game organically. However, it wasn't until the very high level stuff at the very end of the game that I did do some light Googling. I will say, I did get every Steam achievement on my own, and frankly, that's enough for me. Despite this light Googling, I don't feel like I was robbed of my Animal Well experience at all. After a certain point, the game kind of felt like an experiment to see how long it would take the internet to solve all of this guy's puzzles, and they found presumably everything unbelievably fast. While I found most of the base game puzzles out on my own, one, because it had already been found, but also I'm not a cryptographer, I'm a simple, humble gamer, and I still had a blast with Animal Well. Oh, and who's that guy I keep kind of vaguely gesturing at in the background and I keep referencing? That would be Billy Basso. He is the developer of Animal Well. This guy's apparently been in the gaming industry for many, many years. But as far as I'm aware, this is the only game he's ever made on his own and published as a solo developer. And on top of that, he's like an incredible genius wizard man who makes these absolutely phenomenal puzzles. At the start of the game, you're introduced to 4 flames, and then you pop out of this little flower pod thing, and bam, you're off to the races. The map is broken up into 4 initial areas, one for each flame. This part of the game, in terms of difficulty, is fairly accessible to most players, and the player base calls this area, this sort of section of the game, they call it Layer 1. We'll get into detail a little later as to what the heck I mean about layer 1, but think of this as the first part of the game, and to some people, the whole game. I want to take a minute to talk about how just non-traditionally beautiful this game is, and what I mean by that is that this game is so small and pixely, and I wouldn't think of Super Mario Bros. As beautiful in the same way that I'd think of something like Ghost of Tsushima is, if that makes sense. But somehow, Animal Well has been one of the most beautiful games I've played all year, and certainly one of the most beautiful platformers I've played in a while. I think this game found its style and really stuck with it, and I mean, Basso put in the work and it really shows. And I mean everything from the annoyingly placed vines to the odd little animals you find living in the well. Everything comes together in a way that feels so intricate and detailed for a game that is really so small. I mean, this thing's like 36 megabytes. Despite the game size being so tiny and the map being relatively small, I'd say this world is like 10 times as deep as any Metroidvania, or Metroidbrania, if you will, that is out today. It's like as wide as a puddle, but as deep as an ocean, if that makes sense. Especially when you compare it to games coming out today, even in its niche. Apparently, Basso designed something like double the actual rooms that are actually in the game. So for reference, there are like 256-ish rooms in the game, and if you haven't played it, that might not sound incredibly impressive, but when you actually consider that like 90% of them are incredibly detail-rich, that number kind of blows your mind. You start to really appreciate the sort of bizarre, savant qualities that Basso possesses. The world of Animal Well, or The Well, if you will, is absolutely chock full of puzzles. And these puzzles can get mind-bogglingly deep. I'm not going to get into too much detail about the puzzles because you really should go and play them yourselves. This video does obviously contain some spoilers, like I warned, but I'm going to try to keep most of these under wraps because they are just, so much fun to find on your own. But genuinely, this game goes layers deep in ways I frankly couldn't comprehend. The Well is so much fun to just explore and uncover the secrets of which it has plenty. Also hidden around the world are even more things that are just hard to fathom at first glance. These things go potentially 5 layers deep. What am I talking about? 5 layers deep? Animal Well is a lot like an onion, because the more you dig, there's just more there. With every layer you get through, there is another one. I personally believe that there are 5 endings to this game. I'm not going to list them or talk about them in detail here so that you can find them on your own. But to give you some reference, this game has a fake credits scene that is the end of the first layer. So that's step 1 of a 5-step deal. That's just how deep this goes. The fake credits are on layer 1 out of 5. Like, that is just, it's mind-boggling. Frankly, it just goes to show you just how deep this onion really gets. There isn't one. Not really. Not that I can tell, at least. Like I've alluded to and said before, this game is a pure puzzle game. There isn't a story. There really isn't any combat either, at least not traditional combat. There are a couple of boss fights in the game, kind of, but I wouldn't call what you do to this chameleon combat, per se. Yet somehow this has proven to be one of the most captivating games I've played all year. It had me in its full grasp for the 22 hours I played it, and I know for a fact I still haven't even found everything. I don't think the internet has fully discovered everything that Billy Basso has put into this world. But regardless, I am super excited to see whatever he does next, even if it takes another 7 years. I am so glad that I got to play it, and I think you should too. So that's that. Thanks for watching.